I ask for member of Kelowna Mission to lead the House in prayer or reflection.
Holy God, you are love, and this morning we declare that your love wins. For this year's Transgender Day of Visibility, we ask for your love, support, and guidance in creating a world that is more inclusive, more understanding, and more accepting of all. We pray for the safety and well-being of our transgender siblings who too often face discrimination, violence, and prejudice simply for being who they are. We ask that you surround them with love and protection and help us to build communities that support and uplift them. We also ask for your guidance in educating ourselves and others about the experiences of transgender people so that we may better understand and respect their journeys. May we be allies and advocates for their rights and work towards a world where they are valued and fully included. Finally, we lift up all those who have lost their lives to transphobic violence and hate and ask that you hold them close in your embrace. May their memories be a source of strength and inspiration as we continue to fight for a better future for all. We ask for your love to win. Amen.
Introductions by members. Member for Chilliwack Kent.
Honourable Speaker, this morning we raised the transgender flag in front of the Legislature with members from across the House. Started by Rachel Crandall in 2009 to celebrate transgender people and raise awareness of discrimination that they face. Transgender Day of Visibility is held annually on March 31st, but since we're all going to be in our communities to celebrate this day tomorrow, we took the opportunity to celebrate with some guests that I'd like to introduce today. So there's a few of them. Alex DeForge from Community, Michael Roback from Community, Courtney Deacon-Brader from Community, Dr. Aaron DeVore, Chair of the Transgender Studies at the University of Victoria, Adrian Smith, and I know that one of my friends is going to be introducing Suzanne Skidmore, but I can't help but say welcome to her as well. So to everyone who joined us this morning on the lawn, thank you very much and welcome.
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. We have three more guests from Ministry of Housing that are watching question period today. We have Alicia Tika, we have Aman Gill and Leslie Kramer that are watching the proceedings today. I'm hoping the House can please make them very welcome.
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and on behalf of all members of the House who took part in the Kidney Health Breakfast this morning, I want to acknowledge all the people from the Kidney Foundation who have been in the building and have been meeting with us today. We had Pia Schindler and her entire team. I want to acknowledge in particular Chief Michael Pacalma, who brought the greeting. The Chief Pacalma is a kidney recipient himself and an eloquent spokesperson for the circumstance of all those who are transplant recipients. We've had moving stories. We all know our colleague, the Minister of Finance, is an organ donor, and we all know people in our community who have done that, and we want to encourage, as the member for Prince George Valemount very eloquently said this morning, encourage everyone who can to become a donor.
Member for Prince George Valemount.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the Minister of Health. I'd like to join him in welcoming members from the Kidney Foundation here today. And we certainly know the impact on a family, on a person when they are undergoing that kidney journey, and it's very difficult. And I just want to thank Pia Schindler and the team for reaching out right across the province to make sure that people, no matter where they live, get support, encouragement, and resources. And as the Minister of Health said, one of the things that's most important is considering organ donorship. So I would really encourage all of us as we move toward Green Shirt Day, which will happen in just a very short period of time in honor of Logan Boulet. I want to thank a member from Shuswap who has done such an exceptional job in encouraging all of us to become organ donors. So if there's one thing I think we can do to support people on that very difficult journey, it's consider being an organ donor, and we again thank the Foundation for their important work.
Minister of Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and indeed it is a real treat for me today to have a friend, neighbour and ally in the gallery visiting us today. Suzanne Skidmore is here, and Suzanne was actually able to join many of us who were out on the front lawn this morning celebrating the Transgender Day of Visibility. As the president of the BC Federation of Labour, Suzanne is a fierce advocate. She is a fierce ally. She stands up for workers' rights, for human rights in our community and across the province, and we are so fortunate to have her as a neighbour in New Westminster. Would the House please join me in making Suzanne feel welcome?
Minister of Labour.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. In the House today, I'm really honoured to introduce to you. We have the voice of construction workers coming here from across the province. The BC Building Trade Executive are here to meet with me, meet with the Premier and other ministers, and this morning they're here to watch us, as they call it, see spark fly. They are here, Bryn Burke from BC Building Trades, Al Phillips, UA Local 170, Roy Bizzuto, Cement Mason and Plasterers, Brian Cochran, IUOE Local 115, Mark Durton, BC Regional Council of Carpenters, Jeff Higginson, Bricklayers and Allied Crafts, Dan Zezik, District Council 38, Richard Mengeldorf, Sheet Metal Local 280, Miro Morris, Millwright Local 2736, Jim Noon, UA Local 324, Jason Peterson, Sheet Metal Local 276, Mandeep Sangu, IBEW Local 213, Ryan Starchuk, Pile Drivers Local 2404, Phil Venua, IBEW Local 230, Doug Parton Ironworkers, Paul Beacom Ironworkers, Lindsay Masco Ironworkers, Jeremy Ellingham, BC Building Trades, Lane Clark, BC Building Trades, Julianne Lucido, BC Building Trades, Russ Alexander, IBW Local 230, Cale Anguish, IBW Local 230. Mr. Speaker, these are the people who build British Columbia. They continue to build our infrastructure. Please help me and give them a very, very warm welcome.
Member for Kamloops North Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to introduce a couple of people that have traveled here from Kamloops. Margaret Hislop has had over 50-year time span now advising various governments of all political stripes in this place on matters that are important to the Indigenous communities throughout British Columbia. She's down here with her husband Mark, so will the House please welcome Drs. Margaret and Mark Hislop, please.
Minister of State for Infrastructure and Transit.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have two introductions. First, I'd like to welcome Jason Lum, who is the Fraser Valley Regional District Chair. He's also a Chilliwack City Councillor. He is one of my constituents and also my cousin. So would the House please welcome Jason to this place today.
Minister of Municipal Affairs. Oh, okay. Please continue.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. I'd also like to introduce Business Manager Mira Maras from Millwrights Local 2736, and he's a sponsor of close to 100 millwright apprentices throughout BC. Mr. Maras is also the president of the Pacific Regional Maintenance Council, which just recently announced with Wayward Gitat that they will be a major partner with LNG Canada on maintenance of the facility after construction. Under the PRMC, building trade unions will continue to provide good unionized jobs with a workforce that is diverse and inclusive for years to come. So if everyone would welcome Miro to the House.
Minister of Municipal Affairs.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. In the gallery today, I have some special guests. George Harvey, who's the Metro Vancouver Board Chair and also the Mayor of the City of Delta, as well as John McEwen, Metro Vancouver Vice Chair, and also the Mayor of Village of Anmore, as well as Jerry Dubrovny, Metro Vancouver Commissioner and Chief Administrative Officer, and Sandra Jensen, Metro Vancouver General Manager of External Relations. They are here to talk about their priorities with different ministries. And Metro Vancouver received over $50 million from the Growing Community Fund, and I just can't wait to see what projects they'll be building in the near future. And as well, the Premier and I made a splash announcement earlier this month that we are providing Metro Vancouver with $250 million funding to upgrade the Iona Island wastewater treatment plant in Richmond. So I know they are hard at work. The strong relationships that we have between the regional partners across Metro Vancouver's made this funding a reality. So with the health, please make them feel very welcome.
Minister of Indigenous Relations, Reconciliation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I have two constituents joining us in the House today, Lucy and Jonathan Mears. Lucy was a constituency assistant of mine when I first was elected and had served previously with the member for Langford Wanda Fuca for many, many years. They actually met at university. She's now retired and has become fully engaged in the FIRST robotics movement with her husband, Jonathan. She serves on the board of FIRST BC and is a co-volunteer coordinator of the Canadian Pacific Regional, and they were involved in all levels of FIRST robotics. Mr. Speaker, earlier this week, the member for Kelowna West highlighted that Victoria held the FIRST robotics tournament recently, in which Lucy was very, very involved in organization and showcasing the amazing robotics teams from around the world. Would the House please make them welcome?
Minister of Water and Land.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Today, joining us in the House is Charmaine Tom, spokesperson for the Taku River Tlingit First Nation. Janique is a leader within her community, the very far northwest quarter of our province. She is also a leader across First Nations in bringing people together. She has traveled a long way to join us here to talk with myself and many other members of government and others about the importance of the Taku River Tlingit First Nation, what they represent in terms of leadership for our province in bringing people together. Would the House please join me in making spokesperson Tom feel very welcome?
Minister of Environment.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Joining us in the gallery today are Bob and Lara MacDonald. Bob is the retiring Director of Extended Producer Responsibility in the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy, and he has spent his entire 32 years of public service in waste prevention and recycling. Bob's work has helped further BC's growing reputation as the North American leader in extended producer responsibility with programs that support the circular economy as well as our Clean BC Plastics Action Plan. Our program serves as a model for many other jurisdictions, and Bob deserves huge credit for that. I just want to say that in the years I've worked with Bob, his briefings have been fulsome, they've been sharp, and they've been humorous, and it's been a great pleasure to work with Bob. I understand that in retirement, he's planning to live in the country with his family in Shawnigan Lake when he's not playing hockey or building an off-grid cabin on the Sunshine Coast. Will the House please join me in congratulating Bob on his retirement, thanking him for his many years of service, and wishing him and Lara the very best in retirement.
Member for Vancouver West End.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I want to acknowledge Adrian Smith, who is in the House today. I've worked with Adrian on human rights law, on labour law, on anything relating to folks who've been marginalized in our communities. Adrian is there as an advocate with wisdom, with strong voice, and great education for anyone willing to listen. So I just want to thank Adrian for their work and really welcome them to this House.
Member for Vancouver Kensington.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Joining us today is Brandon Yan, the Executive Director of Out on Screen. The Vancouver Queer Film Festival is marking the 35th anniversary this year. Out in Schools is a program that's really taking off across BC. Brandon was here to join us for the flag raising to celebrate International Transgender Day of Visibility. I ask everybody here to please give Brandon a very warm welcome. Thank you.
Member for Burnaby North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have some guests in the gallery today. They are staff, volunteers, and participants in Gaia Community Care and Wellness Society. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Chi Hung Percy Wong, Wong Chung Joseph Wong, Tai Ping Alice O, Chung Tim Ma, Ki Yung Yan, and Lung Chu Chan. Thank you.
Minister of Social Development and Poverty Reduction.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Joining us in the gallery today is a constituent from Nanaimo, Tamara Graham. She is sometimes my dance partner at Diwali. She is also a volunteer with the Kidney Foundation. Will the House please make her very welcome?
Member for Surrey Cloverdale.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Earlier on, the Minister of Labour had the opportunity to list off a group of people that were there, and I would like to take the time to single out one of the recruiters and organizers for the Pile Drivers 2404. He shares the same last name as me. He is the father of my grandson. Would everybody make Ryan Starchuk welcome to the House today?
Member for Vancouver Langara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to also ask the House please join me in welcoming the students in grade 9s through 11 from Eric Hamber Secondary School, the Griffins, the school that my wife went to high school at with her siblings and my nephews. I just met with the first delegation of 3 that will be coming through our assembly this afternoon. They'll be here at 10:40. And I've given them an indication of what's going to be occurring in the House in terms of intimate images and that legislation that follows QP and the importance of that. But also want to welcome Adam Whiteman, the social studies teacher that is with the group, and look forward to all the visits with our students at Eric Hamber Secondary. And I know that the member from Vancouver Fairview would join me in that welcome as well. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I have the honour to present a message from Her Honour the Lieutenant Governor.
Her Honour the Lieutenant Governor transmits here with Bill number 21, Intituled Civil Forfeiture Amendment Act 2023 number 21, and recommend the same to the Legislative Assembly. Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move that the bill be introduced and read a first time now. Honourable Speaker, I'm pleased to introduce Bill 21, the Civil Forfeiture Amendment Act 2023. Far too often, people are lured into gang life with tempting images of fast cars, glamorous homes, luxury goods. By going after property owned by high-level criminal organizations and individuals, BC's Civil Forfeiture Office undermines the profit motive behind unlawful activity and sends a clear message to organized crime. This bill contains necessary enhancements to non-conviction-based forfeiture that would address legal issues, reduce program costs, and increase efficiency. The changes would respond to challenges faced by the Civil Forfeiture Office in several areas, including efficiently collecting information needed to support the program, taking a priority interest in forfeited property, effectively dealing with financed vehicles and addressing organized crime's significant role in the illicit cannabis market. This bill would also create unexplained wealth orders, which are an important evidence-gathering tool that can have a powerful impact on money laundering and organized crime here in British Columbia. Mr. Speaker, I move that... You got permission.
Members, the question is the first reading. Question is the first reading of the bill. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. The Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I move that bill be placed on orders of the day for the next sitting, for second reading, the next sitting after today.
You have heard the question. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member for Kamloops North Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move a bill entitled Miscellaneous Statutes Gas Price Relief Amendment Act 2023, of which a notice has been given in my name on the order paper, be introduced now and read for a first time. Mr. Speaker, we know our province is in the middle of an affordability crisis. Every day, people struggle to make ends meet, with prices for daily necessities like food, housing, and fuel continuing to increase daily. Leaders must take action and provide relief, and real relief. British Columbians pay the highest gas prices with the highest gas taxes in North America, and this has real impacts on people, both in terms of its direct effect on commuters and vehicle owners, but also as a result of its effect on rising grocery and housing costs. Our entire supply chain is affected when gas reaches record-breaking prices. In just a few days' time, gas prices are set to go up by another 3.26 cents per litre as the government's new rate for carbon tax increases come into force. These increases come in addition to other taxes drivers already pay on fuel, including dedicated motor fuel tax with TransLink in Vancouver area, dedicated motor fuel tax, the BC TFA, the provincial motor fuel tax, federal excise tax, and GST. The bill I am reintroducing today would allow for temporary relief from two province-wide motor fuels taxes when prices are high, relieving pressure on both the consumers and the supply chain. It's a straightforward measure, Mr. Speaker, that could immediately provide help to those who desperately need it. It's time to get serious about making life more affordable for British Columbians.
Member, the question is the first reading of the bill. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the bill be placed on the orders of the day for second reading at the next sitting after today.
You have heard the question. All those in favor indicate aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Madam Clerk.
Statements by members.
Member for Kelowna Mission.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I rise in the House today to acknowledge and celebrate International Transgender Day of Visibility. I also rise to say that love will win, and in my core, I truly believe it. Today is a special day during which we get to celebrate transgender, gender diverse, and two-spirited people and educate ourselves on what we can do to be genuine allies while removing transphobia from our communities. The Transgender Day of Visibility was started in 2009 by American activist Rachel Crandall. Rachel wanted a day that would shine a light on the struggles of transgender people while also highlighting their achievements. The day is now observed internationally, where we can acknowledge that living openly as your true self is something many of us take for granted. In this House, we need to implement policies that work towards the equality and respect of transgender people in the workplace, schools, and in our healthcare system. For too long, transgender people have had to fight for their right to equality, and that fight continues today. It takes great courage to not conform to the societal pressures that are unfairly placed on transgender and non-binary people every single day of their lives. And today, I celebrate them. Members and fellow British Columbians, it's important that we take time to reflect and educate ourselves on the unique struggles that transgender, gender diverse, and two-spirited people face every day, and to celebrate their many achievements. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Parksville, Qualicum.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Next time you're flying back from a vacation in Mexico, imagine you're traveling that same distance by flapping your arms. Then consider going all the way to the high Arctic by wing power.
That is exactly what brant geese do every spring, only to return again in the fall, all the way back to Mexico. Well over 10,000 kilometers round trip, it's an incredible journey, and Parks Qualicum is an important refueling stop along the way. In Oceanside, the brant capital of Canada, these intrepid travelers get the respect they deserve, they get time and space to feed on our beaches, and they are the namesake of the Brant Wildlife Festival. The spring celebration of nature was established in 1991, and this will be their 32nd year. This festival truly has something for everyone. The Aerosmith Naturalists perform an annual brant count to keep an eye on the brant numbers. The Brant Wildlife Festival liftoff is this Friday, and I'm looking forward to attending it. They have a carving and art show that's in its 30th year. And this year, for the first time ever, the School District 69 is hosting the Brant Wildlife Children's Festival. And many partners and sponsors, lots of natural-related displays and life-size dioramas will be available for kids of all ages. There will be tours of the Englishman River Estuary, the Heritage Forest, and the Hamilton Marsh. The Brant and basic bird ID and birdwatching courses will be provided by local experts, and the North Island Wildlife Recovery Centre will be doing an eagle release. There are also events at the Deep Bay Marine Centre, Field Station, the Old Schoolhouse, the Macmillan Arts Centre, the Qualicum Beach Museum, and our local libraries, and so much more. For those who are lucky enough to witness this incredible annual migration, when you hear that clink, clink, and see a croak of brants, remember how important it is that we keep space for nature, because we are all connected. Thank you.
Member for Richmond North Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to rise in the House today and acknowledge an important milestone for an organization in my constituency. Last month, I was honored to attend the 15th anniversary of the Richmond branch of the Chinese Christian Mission in Canada. This marks 15 successful years of playing a vital role in the community by offering a large variety of programs and services, including counseling, employment programs, recreation, spiritual growth, first aid training, and welcoming new immigrants to Canada and to Richmond in particular. The Chinese Christian Mission has a youth center in Richmond that offers a variety of child and youth programs focused on empowering youth to become effective leaders. The center also provides support groups for people with specific health conditions and family members going through difficult circumstances. The Richmond office is one of the many CCM offices across Canada doing highly valuable and necessary work to serve our communities while eliminating the multicultural mosaic at home in Richmond and beyond. On top of many ongoing initiatives, the CCM is also raising funds for the victims of the recent earthquakes in Turkey and Syria. The CCM of Canada opened its headquarters in Vancouver in 1979 and has expanded across the country with centers opening in Calgary, Montreal, Toronto, and Edmonton. A true testament to the impact and demand for services offered by this mission. I would like to thank Elaine Chong, Alice Wong, and the CCM team for inviting me to celebrate the anniversary with them. Congratulations to CCM of Richmond for 15 exceptional years of supporting our local community, and I look forward to many, many more to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for North Coast.
Well, pardon me. Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Just before we get started, I wanted to mention that I was unable to attend the flag raising for the Transgender Day visibility, but I did my level best to wear the appropriate colors. That's the best I could do today, but I wish I could have been there. And so I just want to give a shout out to all the trans people in my life and in BC that I don't know. So anyways, today I just wanted to stand up and I wanted to talk about the Prince Rupert Regional Hospital. When the Premier visited the Prince Rupert Regional Hospital just a couple of weeks ago, you know,
We talked with a full complement of the amazing team that keeps Prince Rupert Regional Hospital running. And and I'm so grateful for his visit. I know he didn't expect a shout out today, but he talked with everyone. He talked with our kitchen staff, our cleaning staff, our Indigenous patient liaison, diagnostic imaging. I can never say this right. The MDR people, the medical device reprocessing, the people that clean all the equipment and tools that we use, lab techs, nurses, doctors, and administration. And we heard, and I know this, and I know rural MLAs know this too, but we heard about how the job versatility of rural healthcare providers provide for our people. And, they have to wear many hats. You have to be good at a lot of different things in rural healthcare. And we also heard about some of the hospital infrastructure challenges, but we also heard about some of the amazing upgrades, like the new lab equipment that was recently put in place after a fire. So I just wanted to say that I can't believe I have no time left, but I just wanted to say thanks to the Premier for coming. I'm sorry I talked so long, but I recently had 2 procedures at the hospital, and I got to see the physical challenges they spoke about. But most importantly, I was well cared for. The people and the staff were professional, and I just want to give a big shout out to the team at Prince Rupert Regional Hospital. Thank you.
Member for Saanich North and Islands.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was elected in Central Saanich in November 2008, and that night I received a phone call from Dennis Copeland. Now I was a councillor-elect, Dennis wasted no time to introduce me to the important work that he and hundreds of volunteers had been doing to protect, enhance, and repair our wetlands, creeks, streams, and shorelines of the Saanich Peninsula. We met for a drink at the Prairie Inn. Dennis was the first person I met in my new role. He was there to shamelessly lobby me on behalf of the Peninsula streams. He was direct. They needed me to support their request for a grant and aid. And over the years, I grew to know Dennis as a friend, a passionate advocate and activist defending biodiversity, and Dennis was a voice that nature doesn't have. His involvement in the Hague-Quanus watershed, working closely with my Saanich relatives, inspired the effort to change the name on the map to reflect the name that has always been there, Quanus. Dennis understood there is more to a word, or more to a name than a word. When I became the MLA, Dennis emailed me to ask about dates for the Saanich Inlet Roundtable, making sure he coordinated the voices of the Saanich Inlet so that they could be heard during legislative breaks. I want a date when you're not in the legislature, so you don't have an excuse to miss the roundtable, he wrote to me. Whether it's fiercely defending the Saanich Inlet, stream keeping, shore keeping, restoring wetlands, removing invasive species, Dennis Copeland was a driving force on the ground and around the table. Dennis Copeland passed away on February 18th, 2023. And on behalf of all our friends and fellow volunteers, to Dennis's family, Jason, Kristen, James, and Aiden, our community and our environment is better because of your father and grandfather. Hais Kusia.
Member for Burnby North.
Honourable Speaker, imagine, if you will, that you are 87 years old. You are widowed. You live alone. Your health has failed significantly. You have trouble feeding and bathing yourself. You are starting to get confused about simple tasks. You speak no English. You've forgotten the little English you used to know, but you are not a new Canadian. You've lived here since before many of us were born. You spent your working life toiling in one of the industries that has powered British Columbia's prosperity. You raised your family here, but your family is showing signs of exhaustion and you are beginning to lose your will to live. Well, Honourable Speaker, Gaia Cares has opened a new program in Burnaby North, and it can give you a new lease on life. It started last May as a 3-hour table tennis class. Since then, It has evolved into a seniors all-round development day program that provides structured and supervised social, recreational, physical, cognitive, self-care, aesthetic, and educational activities for frail seniors, post-stroke clients, and those living with early signs of dementia. The program helps to prevent social isolation and encourages independent living in the community. It also provides support and information for caregivers. The program runs every Thursday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. It is led by 3 staff, 3 to 5 volunteers with professional backgrounds in social work, nursing, physiotherapy, education, rehabilitation, and exercise science. They communicate with participants in their first language, which is Chinese. They provide culturally appropriate hot meals and nutritional snacks. I know that there are many more Chinese-speaking families in Burnaby North whose quality of life would be improved by being part of Gaia Cares. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Oral questions by members.
Member for Prince George Valemount.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, small businesses in British Columbia are literally caught in the crossfire of the brutal violence and random attacks enabled by the soft-on-crime Premier's catch-and-release system. Sandeep Alexander, for example, owner of the Festal Cafe, has faced relentless vandalism, theft, and even threats to his staff. He says, and I quote, "Almost every other day we have people walking in, threatening our staff, taking money, iPads being stolen, and multiple encounters of vandalism," end quote. He is now being forced to close his cafe on Granville Street because of the random violence and chaos impacting his business. This is happening all across the province, in every single community. How many businesses must close due to rampant crime and vandalism? And when will the soft-on-crime Premier step up and provide some financial support for businesses that are barely hanging on due to his failed catch-and-release policies?
Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and I appreciate the question from the member. And all of us share the concerns around the issues that the opposition has raised and that we hear about. But I want to make it clear. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their communities. That's why we've taken the initiatives and the actions that we have done in terms of increasing resources that police have asked for to be able to deal with the situation that they're facing, that the men and women who do an incredible job in terms of law enforcement in our communities right across this province, putting in place the tools that they have required. Whether it's ensuring that we get changes done in terms of the criminal code, whether it's ensuring that we get changes in terms of the way in which calls are dealt with through the expansion of CAR programs to deal with mental health calls, the peer-assisted care teams, which we piloted on the North Shore and New Westminster and have proved to be extremely successful and are going to go out across the province. Specialized teams of police, prosecutors, and probation officers and correction officials to be able to deal with people that police have identified before they get to the justice system or after they get to the justice system. All initiatives that police have requested to be able to, that they can do the job that they need to do, Honourable Speaker. We take this very seriously. Other initiatives, today's legislation that has been tabled, part and part of that work, Honourable Speaker. We've done a lot. There's more to do, and we will continue to do it.
Member for Prince George Valemount, supplemental.
Well, thank you to the Minister for that response, and I would ask him to take just a moment and stop and reflect on how absolutely terrifying it would be to be working in a dollar store or a convenience store or a cafe and have someone who is armed walk in and either threaten or actually physically assault that person. It is terrifying, and it is happening everywhere, and it is because we have a soft-on-crime Premier who has a catch-and-release policy in place. Let's hear from John Neat, who runs JJ Bean Coffee, because he's speaking up as well. Here's what he had to say. You go down Columbia Street and Hastings, and people are shooting up right in front of you. Don't even care. It's happening everywhere, in every alley, every door, every storefront. And crime is worse than it has ever been. Not my words, the words of John Neate. Desperate businesses are begging for support to help mitigate the devastating impacts of vandalism and property crime. And yet, the Premier, and again today this Minister, simply ignore their pleas for help. So how many more people need to be hurt? And how many more businesses? The question is about mitigation to support businesses in British Columbia. How many more of them need to close before this random violence and vandalism stops?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And again, I appreciate the question from the member, but I want to make it clear that since taking office, our Premier, our Attorney General have been anything other than soft on crime, have brought in initiative after initiative after initiative to deal with the challenges that communities are facing across this province. And I know, Honourable Speaker, the opposition wants to dismiss initiatives such as $230 million for RCMP in small and rural communities that will help ensure that enforcement takes place in those communities that she's talking about. The opposition wants to ignore the initiatives in terms of mental health supports, in terms of housing supports, that those with mental health who are committing some of the challenges or committing some of the crimes that we've seen in communities across this province that she talks about, that they get the help and are off the streets. They can try and dismiss the fact the expansion of the CAR programs, which was something that they called for, Honourable Speaker, which was put in place, where action was taken by this government. And you called for it to be expanded, and that's exactly what we've done, Honourable Speaker. Those are actions and initiatives. New initiatives such as the peer-assisted care teams, which have been piloted, seen to be a success, and now we want to take it out across the province. Unlike the last time when you sat on this side of the House and there was an effective pilot program, a repeat offender management program, you cancelled it, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, we understand the challenges that businesses and communities are facing. We work with the professionals who are doing the work, the men and women in our police forces, the men and women in our social service agencies, and our healthcare workers, and we will continue to take the steps that we need to make sure our communities are safe.
Member for Vancouver-Langara.
Well, let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. The initiatives after initiatives after initiatives over the past 6 years for this Premier are not working. The Premier's catch and release system is failing. Violent, random attacks have never been worse in British Columbia than they are right now under this soft-on-crime Premier. Serious assaults involving weapons or bodily harm in Vancouver are up over 30% compared to the 2017 to 2019 average. Yesterday, the VPD announced that despite arresting over 200 people with 4,700 previous convictions combined, many were on the streets, right back out on the streets on the same day. The very same day. Small business owners in Vancouver, including in Yaletown, West End, Gastown, Chinatown, and downtown Vancouver, simply can't handle the unchecked violence that has skyrocketed under the soft-on-crime Premier's catch-and-release justice system. Joanne Zarif runs Zatar U Zait, which is mere steps from where Sunday's deadly random stabbing took place. She shares similar experiences as other Vancouver businesses, with her employees feeling scared to come to work due to theft and violent confrontations. Quote, she says, "We don't feel safe anymore." Can the soft-on-crime Premier tell small business owners like Joanne when she and her employees will feel safe again?
Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the member for raising this very important issue. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their communities. And when we hear about the violence in our streets, we know we have to take action, and that's exactly why we're taking the actions that we're taking, Mr. Speaker. It's exactly why we went to Ottawa to ask for changes to the criminal code, specifically around repeat violent offenders. So we had better tools in our justice system to keep them off our streets. It's exactly why we're not waiting just for Ottawa to make those changes. We're investing in the programs that we need in BC that we know have been effective in the past, like the repeat offenders teams that are going to circle around these repeat offenders and make sure that there's a plan in place to keep our community safe and them off the streets. Mr. Speaker, we're taking the actions, investing in the programs that we know worked in the past, because we believe everybody deserves to feel safe in our communities, and we'll keep doing that work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Vancouver-Langara supplemental.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we used to have a society here in British Columbia which was based on the rule of law. But now it seems we just have a state of lawlessness. All under this soft on crime Premier's watch. This is what BC has become, where people don't feel safe.
Let's hear the question, please. Let's hear the question. Shh. Let's hear the question. Please continue. Member will continue.
Well, I don't know what the member opposite was referring to, but I know that every member here in this House, with our daughters like mine who work in downtown Vancouver, blocks away from where that deadly stabbing occurred on Sunday, young people who go to work every day in downtown Vancouver, her coworkers, her friends, who don't feel safe. And I know each member in this House recognizes what it means when your children or your spouse or your parent is walking in the neighborhoods where they don't feel safe anymore. And that's what it feels like. We can here in this chamber talk all about initiatives, but it's not working. It's not working. People don't feel safe on the streets where they live and where they go to work. No neighborhood has been more devastated by the Premier's failed catch and release policies than Chinatown. Thefts, vandalism, and social chaos on our streets spills into Chinatown on a daily basis. 20% of well-established legacy businesses that have been part of the community for generations have permanently closed just in the past 5 years under this NDP government. Next month, Kent's Kitchen will join the growing list of closures, including Goldstone Bakery on Kiefer Street and Mitzi's on Pender Street. How many businesses will close before this soft on crime Premier ends his catch and release system and supports small businesses being decimated with the cost of random violence and vandalism?
Attorney General.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everyone deserves to feel safe in their communities. Women walking down the street, people in their businesses, and we know. And I want to send a message to all those businesses and those people that are feeling unsafe that their government is taking the actions necessary to make the situation better. This is an issue that I know we joined ministers across this country to sit down with the federal government to talk about what we're all experiencing in cities across this country, which is an increase in violence. In Ontario, they talked about gun violence. In Manitoba, it was bear spray. And here we talked about our issues, and we called upon the federal government to make the changes necessary to the bail policy so we had better tools in our system for repeat violent offenders. I'm pleased that we have a commitment that they said they would make those changes this spring, and we'll be watching to make sure that they happen. And in the meantime, we'll continue to invest in the programs and work with our communities to make the situation better. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
House Leader of Third Party.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Montney Play in northeastern British Columbia is the largest potential greenhouse gas emission source in Canada and the sixth largest in the world. While the government rhetoric promotes LNG as clean, we can't escape reality. Exploiting these fossil fuels is contributing to catastrophic climate change, Mr. Speaker. By approving new LNG projects, the BC NDP is locking our province into a fossil fuel economy for decades. The impacts of these choices will be far-reaching, including the upstream emissions increased by fracking. Fracking emits large amounts of methane, which is 85 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Fracking is water-intensive, causes earthquakes, poisons groundwater, and is linked to rare cancers and serious health problems. My question is to the Minister of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation: how many more fracked gas wells are needed to feed the climate monster created by this BC NDP's LNG economy?
Minister of Environment.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. And as I've explained previously in this House, as well as publicly, we released a little more than 2 weeks ago our new Energy Action Framework. The purpose of the framework is to create a context in which British Columbians can be assured that we will be on track to meet our legislated emission reduction targets as part of our Clean BC plan, and to meet our oil and gas sectoral target by working with industry and Indigenous nations to put in place a regulatory cap on emissions from the oil and gas sector. There are a variety of means that will be used to meet that cap. There are other factors in play with respect to the Montney, the recent agreement with the Blueberry River First Nation to limit disturbance, all of which is going to lead to concentrated work by industry, by government, by First Nations to ensure that we are on track to meet our targets, while we also focus on building a strong economy that will include clean energy opportunities in different places in British Columbia, that will benefit Indigenous nations, that will benefit our workers, including our building trades guests here today, and that will position British Columbia very, very well for the clean energy economy that we are all transitioning to around the globe.
Third party House Leader supplemental.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And the Minister knows that the Energy Action Framework doesn't do anything for the increased threat of earthquakes, the increased poisoned groundwater, the increased poisonous and toxic tailings ponds. And so that is really the future of the Northeast in our province. Remember last fall when the Premier said that new fossil fuel infrastructure is not compatible with meeting our climate targets. For decades, this BC NDP government has promised to be one thing, and then they've showed British Columbians that they are another. On one hand, approving more LNG and more fracking, and on the other hand, creating a framework to reduce emissions that we just heard about from the Minister. There was no LNG industry in this province until this BC NDP government created and subsidized it. And the best way to deal with emissions, as we all know, Mr. Speaker, is to not create them in the first place. New poll shows that British Columbians overwhelmingly prefer government to focus on developing renewable energy over LNG. Instead, the BC NDP has chosen more methane emissions, more fracked gas wells, more polluted water, more poisonous tailings ponds, more pipelines, more RCMP rates. My question is to the Minister of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation: when will fracking end in this province?
Minister of Environment and Climate Change Strategy.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. I think what the member opposite is trying to do is take his focus, a justifiable focus, on meeting our climate targets and reducing emissions, and making it a completely binary choice, like there's a light switch we can flick today and move to a new energy reality. It is a transition. We are engaging in that transition. We are doing it through a number of mechanisms that included the announcements from a little over 2 weeks ago. The new Energy Action Framework is a way to meet both our climate commitments and build a healthy, clean energy economy that is growing around the world and that we want to be on the leading edge of. Let me simply close by quoting the professor at the School of Earth and Ocean Sciences at the University of Victoria, Andrew Weaver. BC is leading the way with a new enhanced energy framework a bold plan that will drive down emissions and build new opportunities in the clean economy sector. This framework will accelerate the province's climate commitments while also supporting new opportunities in clean energy and technology, setting up the success of future generations who will benefit off today's investments in clean energy projects in BC.
Member for Nechako Lakes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the Minister of Health, could the Minister please explain the rationale for encouraging people in BC to get the third shot in the fight against COVID-19?
Minister of Health.
Blind and with science. To save their health, to save their lives, to take care of their loved ones, to take care of one another, to help us deal with a global pandemic that's affected every one of our lives, Honourable Speaker. It is true that there are, at present, more than 1 million people who haven't taken their bivalent shot. I encourage them. There are appointments available today, and I encourage them to do so. I think, Honourable Speaker, as we look around the world, we can express our gratitude to the doctors and nurses and naturopaths and dental hygienists who delivered our vaccine program in British Columbia. It saved, Honourable Speaker, conservatively, hundreds of thousands of lives and allowed us to do things that were important, like our children going to school here. It allowed us to come together as a community to help one another in one of the most difficult periods in healthcare and in our community that we have ever seen, one that was unexpected and one that we responded to collectively, and I mean everybody, in an extraordinary way. The reason we get vaccinated is to love one another and to express that love by taking actions to protect ourselves and to protect our loved ones. I'm very proud of the vaccine campaign, and I encourage everyone who hasn't got their first shot to get their first shot, who hasn't got their second shot to get their second shot, who hasn't got their third shot to get their third shot, to get their bivalent vaccine today.
Member for Nechako Lakes, supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for that response. I want to start with a quote from the Federal Minister of Health, who stated on June 30th, the year 2022, and I quote, "The immunity conferred by the primary series of vaccine administered in 2021 has now waned," end quote. It is now been almost 2 years since the original series of COVID vaccine shots were administered to healthcare workers in BC. From my discussion with nurses, approximately 75% of the nurses in the north and 60% provincially have not received a third booster shot. According to the federal minister, this means those nurses are essentially the equivalent of unvaccinated healthcare workers. BC is facing a healthcare crisis. Nurses are being burnt out, working far too many overtime shifts. Hospitals are providing minimal nursing coverage. Emergency rooms are continuously on diversion. Healthcare workers are extremely frustrated, and most importantly, patients are suffering. When will this minister stop playing politics and hire back the healthcare workers that have left the system due to their choice to not receive the COVID-19 vaccine?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. As always, Honourable Speaker, in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, we rely on the science. And on issues of vaccination, we rely on public health. The order in question is a provincial health order. It's one that I support, but it's a provincial health order. 99% plus of BC health care workers got vaccinated, Honourable Speaker. 99%. And the reason they did is because they know and they care about their patients and their health, and they made that determination. I have respect for everybody. I know decisions are difficult to make, Honourable Speaker, and have been difficult to make for people who did, Honourable Speaker, lose their positions. And I respect everyone and the difficult choices they make. But the ones I make, Honourable Speaker, ones Dr. Henry makes, the one that we're making in British Columbia, is to give priority to people who come to our acute care hospital dealing with cancer and heart disease and diabetes, the people who live in our long-term care homes, where they're their homes, who are unbelievably vulnerable today, yesterday, and before to the COVID-19 pandemic, to give their health priority. And that's why we have taken difficult steps together as a community to protect the health of everyone, and we are going to continue to do so.
Member for West Vancouver Capilano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Every day we see the terrible consequence of people with severe mental health and addiction issues not receiving the help that they desperately need. The Riverview lands have long been recognized as a potential site for healing. The fact the Premier himself admitted in 2021, saying, quote, "It has the potential to touch many more lives through delivery of more mental health services, end quote. Yet, 2 years have now passed, and BC Housing has now shockingly confirmed that there are zero plans to realize that potential. In fact, without any public notice, work on Riverview abruptly stopped in January, and there isn't even a timeline for resuming work. Riverview is stalled. BC Housing is a complete disaster. Given the terrible costs of this failure, why has the Premier accomplished absolutely nothing in 2 years to address the mental health and addiction crisis by using the lands at Riverview?
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. There are so many things in that statement that are factually incorrect, Honourable Speaker. I don't know where to start. But I will say this, Honourable Speaker, it's what is understood is that when the previous government shut down Riverview, that there were not enough supports built in communities to support people that needed it. That, Honourable Speaker, is a fact. Honourable Speaker, we are right now in discussions with quick elimination. It's what's vitally important in those negotiations is that we don't go in there and say, here's our plan, come on to our plan. What's vitally important part of those discussions is saying, let's sit down to the table and build those plans together. And so the interview perhaps the member is talking about, I had made that clear to the member, to the reporter as well, that we are in conversations with the quick elimination. We're in conversations with them about what the future of that site can look like. They are in an election right now. That's why there's a pause, because we want to let their election process happen. Once the election process is over, we will continue that conversation.
Member for North Kamloops, North Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is clear is BC Housing is in complete disarray, and they seem to go out of their way to have a lot of secrecy around their operations. In fact, we have a forensic audit that's now been sitting for upwards of 3 weeks on the government books. The Premier has the power to release the forensic audit immediately, as the Freedom of Information Act makes it very clear under Section 25, he has that power. Will the Premier commit to releasing that forensic audit of BC Housing today and make it available for scrutiny at public accounts?
Minister of Housing.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And the Premier earlier this week made it clear, I certainly have made it clear, that our intention is to have that report released with as little redaction as legally possible. I have read the report. I believe it's in the public interest. Right now, we are following the process that needs to be followed, which is notifying any entities that may be named to give them the right to be able to see the contents where they're named. Once that is done, once the process is complete, we will be releasing this report to the public so the public can see what the findings were.
Member for Abbotsford West.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. What we have and what the government seems to refuse to want to acknowledge is an absolute mess out there. We've got a growing state of lawlessness. We've got people who are terrified to go out in the streets in their own community. We've got businesses that are being forced to close because of the escalating rate of violent crime where they operate. What we also know is that when it comes to releasing reports and information that accurately reflect the negative results of the Premier's failed policies, he has a marked preference for finding times when he thinks the least number of people might be paying attention. So let me ask this. The Minister insists that the report's coming. Well, which holiday long weekend is he going to release it on? Is he going to hide it in the Easter Bunny's basket? Is it, maybe he'll drop it on the weekend everyone's heading off to the campground on Victoria Day? Or maybe the government hopes that the noise from the Canada Day parades will drown out the criticism that undoubtedly exists within that forensic audit, Mr. Speaker. Or who knows, maybe they'll declare a new statutory holiday called Take Out the Garbage Day. Mr. Speaker,
Members, shh, members, please proceed.
We actually wouldn't have to ask the question if the Minister and the Premier would do this, and that's release the audit today unredacted so people could see the impact of these failed policies. Mr. Speaker, when will they release the report?
Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And I'll just say that the jokes from the member are not funny. And what else wasn't funny, Honourable Speaker, was when he removed an entire chapter out of an ICBC report, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, we will take no lessons from that side about releasing reports. They have zero credibility on the topic, Honourable Speaker. And what I have said, I'll repeat again, which is I've read the report, I believe it's in the public interest, we are following the normal processes that are needed, and we will be releasing it.
The bell ends the question period. Member for Penticton.
It gives me good pleasure today to bring a petition to the Legislature from 4 hardworking, incredible ladies in Penticton and area that are doing their best to inform people in our area about what we, the undersigned citizens of BC, ask the BC government to take immediate action to stop all logging in areas of risk as defined by the Forest Strategic Review and protect trees, preserving biodiversity and resilience, and supporting First Nations critical to our planet's survival, and act on all 14 recommendations in the BC government's panel, A New Future for Our Old Forests. Thank you very much, Honourable.
Madam Clerk.
Orders of the day.
Government House Leader.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. In the main chamber, I call Committee of the Whole on Bill 12, Intimate Images Protection Act. In Committee Room A, I call continued debate on the Committee of Supply of the Ministry of Forests. In Committee Room C, I call continued debate on the Committee of Supply for Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy.
Committee chairs.
If I might, members, let's have some order in this chamber, please. We're just awaiting for the arrival for staff for the Attorney General so we can start this committee stage consideration of the Intimate Images Protection Act, Bill 12. Right, we're here for clause-by-clause consideration of Bill 12, recognizing the Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, I would just like to acknowledge the staff that are here with me today from the Justice Branch, Darren Thompson and Kaylee Johnston. Thank you.
Thank you. On Clause 1, Member for Abbotsford West.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. We were on Clause 1, and after dealing with some preliminary matters, we were actually considering some of the terminology that is defined in the bill and in Clause 1 of the bill. The term that I'd just like to take a moment to pose some questions to the attorney on is that term depict, which becomes a defined term under this what will ultimately become a new act. The definition is set out in subs A, B, and C of the definition. I noted that in the report of the Uniform Law Conference of Canada, they turned their mind to a possible fourth category that they term wholly original content, and we can explore what that briefly what that entails. The government has chosen not to include a reference to quote wholly original content, end quote, and I'm wondering if the attorney would like to indicate why that decision was made.
Attorney.
Thank you. So I'll just read out the section that answers your question here. So the definition of intimate images would likely not apply to wholly original content, such as a drawing or a painting, while still being harmful and humiliating. The harm of the person might suffer in the case of original art is a different character than photos and videos, and does not involve the same breach of trust or have the same implications for sexual autonomy. In cases involving wholly original art, a person may have to consider relying on other causes of action, including invasion of privacy, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, etc.
Member.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. So the attorney and the government are satisfied, therefore, that a very lifelike drawing of an individual that is nude or nearly nude, an intimate drawing in a very lifelike fashion that presumably could constitute a similar invasion of privacy does not warrant the same degree of protection as a photograph or a video.
Attorney.
Thank you. So a few things to add for my previous comments. So the first one is I'm told that the landing of that definition was based on a review of academic articles, so academics that were giving guidance on the types of images that are causing the most harm and how to circle around those images with the Act. So we framed the Act in the way that focused on those ones with the most harm and the most need for intervention, I guess I would say, when it came to an illegal action. I would also say that, you know, what will happen with this definition, as you know, or as the member knows in terms of how the law develops, is I'm sure there'll be many factual scenarios that come up when it comes to this definition of depict that, you know, the adjudicator would determine whether or not it fits within that category. So,
Member.
Okay, that's, thank you, Honourable Chair. That's helpful. Two things, though, that flow from that. The first, and if I didn't acknowledge this, I should have, and I will. The Uniform Law Conference of Canada report, upon which I think much of the legislation, or the vast majority of it, is based, considered this matter and provided a rationale for for a definition that they believe does not capture a sketching or a drawing, and so that I make that acknowledgement. But what I just heard from the attorney is that I think what I just heard is that she believes this definition is broad enough to possibly capture a sketching or drawing, and the type of drawing I'm thinking of is a very lifelike depiction of an identifiable individual that, for all other purpose, if it were a photo, would be captured by the provisions of this Act. The attorney seems to believe, or seems to have meant to convey earlier, that she believes this definition is broad enough to capture a sketch, a drawing, or an etching.
Attorney General.
Thank you. So I think what's clear with the evolving nature of technology and the different uses of technology and how quickly it's evolving, we know that the definition as written and also the jurisprudence will evolve to capture all that. So I'm really reluctant to make a comment on a factual scenario that might restrain judicial discretion when it comes to the interpretation of that definition. But what I will say is that I think that once this is in place, we'll have many scenarios or factual circumstances that come up where a person is free to come forward with this process to talk about the image that they feel is being spread without consent and seek a judicial determination on whether or not it falls under this broad definition.
Member.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. All, again, helpful. I will take minor issue with simply one part of what the attorney said. These debates, just in general terms, I know the minister knows, are kind of intended to convey an intent of Parliament. So when I ask the attorney whether she believes the definition is broad enough to include a drawing or a sketching, I think it's a relevant question, and to say I don't want to influence judicial consideration. Actually, that's why we're here. We are here to convey and ensure that the will of Parliament, as expressed in this legislation, is as clear as it can possibly be.
Attorney.
Okay, thank you. So we've been engaging in a very interesting and complicated discussion about technology and technology's interface and its evolving nature with how it can change images, alter images, and change that level of basically the level between original art and an altered image. So what I will say clearly is that the intention of this definition is not to include original art, right? So original art is not included. There's other remedies, as I mentioned before, if somebody feels like they've been violated in that way, and we're not condoning that type of behavior. But where it gets more complicated, where I think judicial intervention may be needed, is that original art can be altered in many different ways and depicted in different ways to capture somebody in a way that would be brought into this legislation. So this is where we're thinking that this will evolve with technology, and we leave it open for that to evolve, because I think given the nature of how quickly things can spread and change and be altered, you really need that judicial determination on that particular image to see if it's been captured in that way. I hope that brings clarity to the
Member.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. And again, it is helpful. And look, there are subsequent provisions that deal with the phenomenon of an image that has been altered, and we can explore that perhaps a little further down the line. And look, I'm not advancing the proposition that there is a rogue army of artists out there who are on the verge of trying to cause harm by creating pictures and drawings that are in violation of people's privacy. I'm not going to ask the Attorney General this question, but my expectation is that of the complaints that she referred to and the charges that she referred to last day, virtually none of them, or probably none of them, related to drawings and artistic impressions as opposed to photographs or videos. And if that's not the case, the attorney can advise the committee, but we can certainly move on to other areas. The next term under the Ds is the term distribute, which occupies a place of prominence in the legal construct that is being created here. I'll start by asking the minister to confirm whether or not an applicant or a claimant in availing themselves of the remedies that the Act provides is required to demonstrate an intention to distribute on the part of a respondent in the case of Clause 6.
Attorney.
So no, there's no level of intent required. The elements of making out the statutory offense is that it's non-consensual and there's been distribution.
Member.
All right, let's just take a moment then to ponder that. On its face, the verb to distribute requires an intent. I can't imagine how one would distribute something without having the intent to do so. Is it the presence of the phrase "otherwise make available" in the definition that eliminates the need to establish intent? that's, I think my question is one of mechanics. On its face, the term distribute would seem to require an intent to do something. Is it the inclusion of the phrase otherwise make available that eliminates that otherwise standard requirement of intent?
Attorney.
Thank you. So like many of the provisions in this act, it's really victim driven. So it starts to, it's victim driven, right? So it focuses on outcomes for the victim. So that the idea that distribute, unfortunately with technology, can be done without intent. So for example, if you upload an image, and it's easy for other people to depict it or distribute it in other ways. You may not have intended that distribution, right? But because you did the uploading, the distribution happened. So, and there's other examples of maybe where there's no intent, but it's being distributed, that are interplay between a lot of the non-consensual disclosure of these images. So that's why it's meant to be, and it's meant to be as broad as possible. So for example, if you have an image of somebody that you have, it's an intimate image without consent, so it meets that definition. You've hung it on a wall, right? Somebody so it's available for distribution, right? It's a broad, the reason that the definition is very broad is because we want to capture all scenarios where there's harm to the victim, and distribution can show up in many different ways, like the example that I gave you, so.
Member.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. Is there on the basis of that helpful explanation, is there in the attorney's mind, or perhaps even more importantly in the context of the way the bill is drafted, is that requirement, that lack of requirement for intent, present to an equal degree with respect to applications made under Clause 5 and Clause 6? And here's my rationale. To the Minister's point, the victim, the plight of the victim as it relates to the injunctive relief in Clause 5, there would seem to be a very rational argument that one is indifferent to the question of intent. It's just, this is happening and it must stop, versus the relief that is available in Clause 6, which relates to damages. And it strikes me that the question of intent might be, in many cases, would be relevant with respect to an assessment of damages, whether they're pecuniary damages or otherwise.
Minister.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. So we're getting into some of the sections that come later on that actually explain the different types of orders that have different paths when it comes to damages. So for Section 10, the real focus of that one, so that one is about just getting the order to take down the image. It's very fast, and it's meant to be circled around that, right? But then when we come for any claim for damages, then the court would consider a wider range of factors which are set out in the legislation. So the real driving force is consent. So if you are an accused in this scenario, what you would say is, what you could raise as a defense is, I had the consent for the distribution up to this point or up to that. Like this, that's the way that this legislation is framed. It's more about that.
Member.
Thanks, Honourable Chair. And we will come to some of those distinctions as between the difference between the clause 5 versus clause 6 process. One thing maybe we should probably be careful about in the case of this, and I say this with genuine respect, is we should probably avoid using terms like the accused. In these proceedings, there are obviously respondents, and I certainly know what the minister, the attorney was referring to, but we had, I thought, a very good conversation last day about establishing that the separate criminal code process remains in effect where there is an accused versus what we are dealing with here, which is a respondent. The next term that is important in the context of the legislation and how relief is sought is and plays a role in securing the relief is an internet intermediary, and it's one of those things on the surface. I guess we can imagine, and I'll read the definition into the record. Means an organization that hosts or indexes third-party content through an online platform. I'll simply ask the attorney to kick this off to advise the committee 2 or 3 obvious examples of who the ministry and she believe qualify as internet intermediaries.
Attorney.
Hey. Thank you. So this is another example that will be ever evolving, and we want this definition to be broad enough to keep up with the different platforms and you know, how the internet evolves. But I can give you examples of sites that this would be captured, like Facebook or Twitter or Reddit, other platforms that young people might use.
Member.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. The common feature being, and what I think the definition is seeking to focus in on are internet organizations that allow interaction between third parties and access and participation, whether by subsequent posting or commentary by third parties. Is that a fair assumption on my part?
Attorney.
And so the question, the question that I think I put to the staff in the briefing we had, that if that's the general proposition, we immediately think of those large platforms, the ones that the minister mentioned. But would it also include a smaller website with a chat room where there is an opportunity for third parties to interact?
Attorney.
So yes, it's broad to just have any organization that hosts or indexes third-party content. So yes, it would be a platform like the member suggested. Noting the hour, I move that the committee rise and report progress and ask leave to sit again.
Members have heard the question. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Attorney. This committee is adjourned.
Committee Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Committee reports progress on Bill 12 and seeks leave to sit again.
When shall the committee sit again? Government House Leader.
Next sitting, Speaker.
So ordered. Committee Chair.
Honourable Speaker, Committee of Supply Section A reports progress on the estimates of the Ministry of Forests and asks leave to sit again.
When shall the committee sit again? Government House Leader.
Next sitting, Speaker.
So ordered. Committee Chair.
Speaker, Committee of Supply Section C reports progress on the estimates of Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy and asks to leave to sit again.
When shall the committee sit again? Government House Leader.
Next sitting, Speaker.
So ordered. Government House Leader.
I move that the House...
Members, you heard the question. All those in favor indicate aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. This House stands adjourned until 1 p.m. today.